PSA members. We are meeting and discussing as members of the Palm Beach PSA. We're not speaking for the organization itself, talking about some personal experiences and things that we've learned in preparing for this upcoming primary election. We did have a live stream where we did a candidate forum. We invited all the candidates for the primary in Group 3 to join us to talk about their run and their office. And we had one person who returned up our response, and that was Clarence Williams. So we sat down with him for about half an hour. You can find that on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. So I'm going to start with you, Cameron, because you did a lot of the background work. I really couldn't be involved deeply with the questions that were asked because of my connections to different parts of that campaign. But what was your reaction to the? What'd you take away from it?
From the forum itself, I took away that any group of actively involved grassroots organization type people can put together a forum and have the questions that are important to them and the people they represent asked of these candidates. So stuff that you might not hear answered on a TV interview or in a local newspaper interview. Questions about specific imports and exports through the port is something that you would not see touched in a regular interview. Questions about specific donors and how their campaigns are funded, that's something not normally touched in a mainstream publication.
So let's step back a step. In
sure.
case people didn't watch it, I'm all about what you're talking about, but in case people didn't watch it, what did you learn about the office itself? Someone's coming in, doesn't know what the Port of Palm Beach is and why it matters that we talk to this dude.
Sure. So the Port of Palm Beach, I learned, is a independent taxing authority. It's a district that covers roughly 60% of the county, I would say, focusing more on like the centering in Riviera Beach, but expanding all the way up north to Palm Beach Gardens and Jupiter, and a bit out west too, down into West Palm, and they oversee millions and millions of dollars of business and imports and exports. They have cruise lines, they have freight that comes in through that port, and the commission has pretty broad reaching authority over the port in terms of like taxes and tariffs and infrastructure build outs, capital improvements, those sorts of things. And I learned that, what else did I learn about the port itself?
How about you, Milo? Anything jump out at you that you learned?
Go to Milo for a bit.
You're muted. I'm sorry, I had to mute you.
Oh, okay. Well, obviously the port's not an office a lot of people know that much about, but the port's really important for Riviera Beach. That area employs a lot of people. So you're going to want somebody who is going to put their interest first, not necessarily the big sugar companies or anything that are going through the port. So that's why I think it's important you ask questions to them, like when we asked about how we would handle workers' union, and he compared it to like a special interest, like the sugar corporation. It's like really let you know how he's thinking. So maybe like our audience didn't like his answer that much, but it's good to really get him out there and
so for me,
get the community to ask him questions.
For me, the big surprise was the fact that the Port of Palm Beach, that set of offices, that body, there's 5 members? Is that right, Cameron?
That's correct. 5 members.
Yeah, so there's 5 boards, and their jurisdiction is more than half of this county, which is one of the largest counties in the country, and they can tax anybody in their jurisdiction. And I'm pretty sure they don't have much oversight. They've never taxed anybody, but they can do that. So now we can go into what Cameron was saying, and I totally agree that being a member of an organization is going to give you a degree of credibility and allow you to ask these people questions that you're not going to see asked anywhere else. And I mean, honestly, I have some sympathy, a little bit of sympathy for him, because I really feel like some of the questions he got, he's never had asked of him before in his life, and this is not the first office he's run for. Because the type of people who would get him somewhere and ask him a question don't ask those questions.
Yeah, and credit to him for showing up and answering the questions truthfully and directly. There was no beating around the bush. And I think it was a learning experience for him as well, because like you said, those are questions he might not have been asked regarding issues he might not have been aware of. So to us, it was sort of a interesting response to the labor question, but maybe he had never even considered the possibility of union organizing among port workers. And
now with the labor question, didn't he immediately say yes when we asked him if he didn't say immediately say yes, he basically said, I would encourage it, but I can't do anything about it. The one that when he brought the labor thing was when he was talking about taking money from Big Sugar and saying, well, that's the same thing, money from labor.
Well, the thing that was interesting was like obviously the type of people who would host like a forum like this or would ask questions like that would probably be like, people who have time to do this stuff, not like working class people. So he didn't know necessarily the correct answer, because to him, like how he's interacting with people, a labor union and a sugar company are just special interests. They're not, community forces. So.
And I got to give him credit, like Cameron did, in that he didn't hedge, at least. I mean, like so those last two questions, why don't you tell the people what the last two questions were, Cameron? Because I know you agonized over whether or not they were too aggressive.
Yeah, as this being our first forum, and I wasn't sure if we wanted to ask them, but it's important to know where the funding comes from, specifically regarding special interests that are incredibly active in the state of Florida and have really deep entrenched clause into our political system, those being the sugar industry and the energy industry. For the energy industry, we're mainly worried about the biggest player in the state, which is FP&L, Florida Power and Light, which is a subsidiary of Next Era Energy. And so we asked if he has received any money from them, and if so, would he be willing to return those donations to avoid the conflict of interests and avoid even the optics of being beholden to this giant group that doesn't reflect the interests of Floridians or people of the district, the Port of Palm Beach district. The people with ownership stake in FP&L don't live, in the majority, don't live within the district. Those aren't his constituents. And yet they might have the most influence of anyone because of the amount of political spending they do. And the other group is Big Sugar, which consists of US Sugar is the largest company, but there's actually a collection of companies called the Florida Crystal is also like sort of like a company name under this larger umbrella group, which is like the Florida Cooperative of Sugar Growers or something like that. I don't remember the name exactly, but yeah, we hit all those points. And his response was, what's wrong with them, basically? Like he hadn't thought like what would be wrong with being funded by them. And he sort of compared it to taking money from unions. And it's like, if I'm going to take money from one special interest group, referred to unions as like another special interest group. And it's like, not quite. We didn't argue with them. That was the other.
Yeah.
We didn't argue at that point. But what I would have liked to say to him is that labor unions represent the people who are actually living and working in your district. Those companies do not. They represent an interest that is not within the district.
But I will say this, that I hear you, but I would accept a pledge across the race if someone willing to reach across the aisle and say, well, I won't take money from special interests or labor if you do the same. I'd be willing to get labor money out of politics, to get all money out of politics if that were part of the package deal, personally. I mean, everyone has a different point of view on that. But I do want to point out once again that he showed up. And I'll tell you this, as you know, I'm not a Dem. I'll not be voting in the Dem primary. And there's a write-in, I believe, running for the seat. So there will be a general election. But as much as I was disappointed with a lot of the answers I got, I was less disappointed than I expected, considering his background. knowing that he's a police officer. I didn't think that there's going to be anything that came out of his mouth that I, as a DSA member, would appreciate. If I were voting, I would say that he earned my vote with that interview. You know, for better or for worse, considering the two that are running, him and the incumbent, Enright, who didn't even bother to return the email when she's in an election. That's problematic in and of itself. And a lot of the things that I would naturally be inclined to not like about him, like being a police officer, are also true about her. So, So, Milo, who'd you vote for in that race? Do you remember?
I voted
do you
for.
Care to, do you care to share?
I care to share. I don't mind. I voted for the chief. Just because just because I don't know. We don't know anything about the other lady because she didn't show up and there's not much about her. So I know about the chief. Went with the chief. I
know a fair bit about her.
Yeah.
And I would have voted for the chief. I'm not going to go into details here, without, anything to back it up. But how about you, Cam? Do you have a lean one way or another, or do you not care to share?
Yeah, after that interview, I went with Chief Williams. Like you said, I didn't agree with his stances, but the fact that he took our interview means that if we had an issue come up during their term, he's going to be the one that's going to be responsive. And if he finds himself on the other side, at least we have that, he's making himself available to have those conversations. And he seemed like generally open to and aware of the threat of climate change.
He put that forth before we mentioned it. He started.
That's right.
Question came up. No,
exactly.
Sorry.
No. You're absolutely right to bring that up. He was proactive about mentioning that, and we can work with him as far as like the details of what action needs to be taken, whether that means building seawalls or planting mangroves, which is like the more natural solution to sea level rise and erosion. But yeah, those conversations can be had with the person that shows up to the forums, to discuss the issues that people care about. And right, I don't know what I don't know where her ideology lies or her values lie, but I know her values obviously aren't interacting with the people and hearing what her constituents are concerned about. So yeah, Chief Williams won my vote through that forum.
He was also patient with our ignorance, or with my ignorance. I was reading your questions, and you were talking about the gulch. What's it called? The where they dig deeper.
The channel and
the channel.
There's the channel and there's the turning basin, which is where the ships like turn around.
Right. We asked him if he wanted to dredge that out further, and then asked him to explain it, and he patiently explained it in a way that was easy to understand. Which a lot of politicians will just be like, poof, magic, dust fairy, whatever. And he spent some time really digging into it. I feel like he has some passion for this subject, for this office.
That's right, and he wasn't, as I've seen in so many other candidates for this office, gung-ho about dredging. I don't think he had it off the table, but he was very much aware of the drawbacks and the downsides to the environment, to the local businesses that rely on the pristine condition of those waterways and what dredging does to that. It's so I'm glad that he was aware of that, and that gave me some that made me feel good about his candidacy. Milo, did you have any thoughts on did you know the logistics of like the channel and the turning basin and how he had explained that? Was that enlightening at all for you, or?
I knew basically nothing about that whole situation until I heard we were hosting the forum, and then I looked into it. So it's like, that's probably one of the positions that people know like the least about, which is why it's good to have this discussion, because people need to know it has an economic effect on their neighborhoods.
So this is the first thing that we have done, and what we hope will be a longer string of them. This will probably be the last one that we do for the primary, because the primary is in 4 days, and most people are doing mail-in ballots, so mostly have mailed in their ballots already. We'll be moving to the general election. I'm going to do a screen share here real quick. What we have been working on is on our website at palmbeachdsa.org/voter-guide/ you'll find the voter guide that we've begun. It tells you some important dates like primary information, etc. You can see a sample ballot there, and more important information regarding COVID, etc. You get a list of the types of offices that will appear with a link. And then if you go a little further and deeper, we have a link to different debates, different interviews. The first one, of course, is done by us, but many of them were not done by us. We sent out candidate questionnaires to people running for Florida 20th in the primary. I believe it's Sheila Sheriff McCormick and Alcee Hastings. Mr. Hastings did not respond to us, but I have been hearing that he's having some serious health problems. We do have a list of her responses here, so we highly recommend that you take a look at that if you're going to be voting in Florida's 20th district for U.S. Congress. And then several debates, candidate forums, and things like that. And somewhere on here we have, or will soon have, a link to financial reports for all the candidates that we could easily find that for. We have some spreadsheets broken down by race, so you can see who's taking how much money from whom. And we think that will be useful for a lot of these situations where you can't really figure out who you should vote for by any other method. Maybe you don't have enough information about them or whatever. Well, who gives them money could probably be kind of an important way of figuring that out. Now, did both of you go to the candidate forum for District 88 where the fireworks were?
Yep, I was there.
Right, so
was going off.
I'm going to ask you about that, and but first, let me give a little background on District 88. So let me see if I can find a map. District 88, I noticed District 88's race. This is the state house of Florida. So this is people go to Tallahassee, state representative. They get 2 years. It's a part-time job, pays $36,000 a year. You have an office in your district, and then 2 months out of the year, you go to Tallahassee. You have the legislative session where you pass the budget and all the money for all the laws for that year. I noticed it because it had, when I first noticed it, 4 or 5 people in the primary on the Democratic side. And there is an incumbent. He's not term limited. And that's very, very uncommon in the state of Florida. It's much more likely that you'll have one person running alone. So that's when I initially had noticed it. I kind of felt like there wouldn't be that many Dems running in the race unless they, for some reason, had permission. There was, for some reason, blood in the water. Another very interesting thing about District 88, as I share the screen, is that it is maybe the most gerrymandered district I've ever seen in my life. This is District 88. And up here, you have pretty much Riviera Beach, Lake Park. Lake Park is like 1/3 black. Riviera Beach is majority black. And it follows a small little strip here down Dixie Highway, opens up into certain parts of Boynton Beach and Delray. This is an ugly piece of work. I think it's like, I mean, from Lake Park down to Delray Beach is what, a 40-minute drive, something like that, you know?
No, it looks completely natural to me.
Yeah, no, you're right. These are all natural borders here.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
So the incumbent is a gentleman named Al Jaquette, and Al Jaquette is he has a radio show, and he's been under fire for some statements he's made that may appear to be homophobic, transphobic, and a few other things that are bad. His primary opponent is Omari Hardy. Omari Hardy currently sits on the Lake Worth City Commission. Some of our members have dealt with Mr. Hardy in trying to get certain things done or undone in the past. So with that background, Milo, please take it away.
It was interesting to watch because you had Al Jaquette, who's the incumbent, and he seemed like angry the entire time, especially at Omari Hardy. And so, okay, so just to go over it, there's Al Jaquette running. He's the incumbent. There's Omari Hardy, who's a city council person for the town of Lake Worth. There's Cedric Thomas, who's a retired police officer. And I believe he was on the Riviera Beach City Council. Mm-hmm. And then there's Sienna Asta, who is, I think, a litigation attorney. Just to run through it, Al Jaquette's the incumbent, so he's got an advantage already. Omari Hardy, I think, just from what I've seen, is probably his main contender. Cedric Thomas, he seemed like he didn't seem on their level, and Sienna Asta seemed like she was very inexperienced. She seemed nice, but not too much experience. So the forum was mostly Omari and Al Chiquette going back and forth, and so Al Chiquette was really going at Omari about his record in city council. He was going at him about this video that is floating around about Omari, discussing his plan to basically gentrify Lake Worth. And then Omari shot back with talking about Al Chiquette's radio show, where he's apparently pretty problematic, because he said he made homophobic remarks about Omari Hardy. He made other remarks that are not, acceptable about other people too. His radio program is in Creole, so I'm not entirely sure what the remarks are. So, and that was the level that was his response to Omari Hardy bringing them up. He basically just said, "You don't speak Creole, you don't know what you're talking about." So it's there's some drama going on. But from that discussion, Omari Hardy came out looking the best. He looked the most professional.
Did I hear that Jaquette stormed out, or was that not?
Jaquette he left briefly and then he came back.
Got it. Did you get to watch it, Cameron?
I did. Unfortunately, I wish I hadn't. Because it's people that all have a chance of being in our state legislature and
invaluable seats.
Yeah, and you have inexperience and some sort of bizarre answers to questions, and then you have like the two front runners behaving like children, and neither of them has particularly favorable politics to begin with. They're very problematic politics from both of them, with Jaquette being a big supporter of charter schools and throwing around all the choice rhetoric instead of supporting our public school systems, which provides a lot of opportunity, provided me with a lot of opportunity, and I'm grateful for it. And then on the Hardy side, as Milo mentioned and you mentioned, he's had some problematic interactions with grassroots groups in his city, and issues with gentrification. He's been a big supporter of gentrification, and now he's got this whole campaign where he has all these progressive sounding values and statements that go viral, but no history of governing behind those values. So I'm glad I don't live in that district, because when I'm faced with situations like that and there's no good candidates, I default to the person who raised the least amount of money, because they're going to be the least beholden to big business. And in this case, that would be Philippe Babjun. He's also a radio host for a Haitian radio program. And I don't have too much knowledge or interaction with him, other than when I was helping someone with their municipal election, they did end up appearing on his program, and he was pretty inviting, and that was cool. But other than that, I don't know how he would govern as a legislator. But he's raised the least amount of money, so he's the least tied to big business interests. Right. And yeah.
All right. So Milo said he's got about 10 minutes left before he's got to go. And there's one more subject I want to bring up. This is more general election stuff, but my mom, of all people, sent me this article about something that we have been discussing. I don't know where the bodies come down on this. I don't remember. But it's from the Tampa Bay Times, and it says that the Amendment 3 would suppress Black representation in Florida, the new report says. And basically, I haven't read this in a couple of days, but I will try and remember the details. One of the big complaints that they have is the fact that so many people in Florida are in PA. And, I personally believe that is because there's only 2 parties listed on the voting ballot, and you have to know what the other parties are if you want to choose one. But this is something that's been used. So the idea behind Amendment 3 is to get rid of the primaries we have right now, which are closed primaries, and create one single jungle primary for basically all the state offices, the governor and his cabinet, state house, and state rep. So what that means is everyone who's running for office will be in one primary, and the top two vote getters from that primary, regardless of what party they're in, would proceed to the general election. And the logic behind that is that primaries are closed, and since so many Floridians are not members of either party, that they're locked out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a report came out that basically found that, first of all, that most Black people are a member of a party. Most Black people are a member of the Democratic Party. Meaning that if you have a situation where it's easier to shut out Dems, because you can run, there's different ways to manipulate it by splitting the vote. You know, if 3 Dems run and 1 Republican runs, you know, there's just different ways that they can shake out that impact how the vote is split. And since Black people tend to be more likely to be of a particular party, if a particular party can get shut out of certain races, then they're going to absolutely lose representation and be less likely to be able to move in. They also point out the fact that it's paid for by the past finance chairman of Governor Rick Scott's 2014 reelection campaign, a guy who runs a single man healthcare investment company that is made him millions or billions, I don't know which. He spent $6.2 million on this campaign himself. I know that Cameron has been opposed to the idea of Amendment 3. Do you have an opinion on Amendment 3, Milo? Or did you before this discussion began?
Yeah, I looked into it, and I looked into how it's working in places where they've implemented like a jungle primary system, like California. Mm-hmm. And from what I've seen, like I really don't think there's anything that there's nothing that it would improve. It would just complicate things for most people, I think. And it would just basically make the system like more gameable. Like you could just mess with it easier. Like obviously the 2-party system, it's not great, but this is not the solution, I don't think.
All right, so I'm sorry, let's talk about parties here. I am co-chair of the Green Party of Florida. Cameron either does or used to hold office in the Democratic Party, and I don't know what Milo's party affiliation is or if he cares to show it. So I want to make that clear. All right, so I make that clear as we discuss this, that we're not all of the same party. Cameron, what do you have to say about this?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I am a Democrat. I used to be on the board of the Democratic Progressive Caucus of Palm Beach County. I'm a precinct committee person, and I've been advocating for a long time for electoral reforms that would solve the 2-party duopoly, because I realize like it shuts out a lot of people. I've been actively pushing for what's called semi-open or semi-closed primaries, which allows non-party affiliated voters to vote in either primary, but doesn't necessarily smush all of the candidates together so that one party can game the system by having other people run as Democrats and splitting the vote. Because unfortunately, with first past the post voting, cramming all the candidates together does not solve the problem of representation. It just opens it up to more tricks. Because you can still run candidates to split the vote. We have the spoiler effect. So the solution to that is ranked choice voting, which is a whole nother electoral reform. It allows voters to rank their preference and not have to worry about voting their values and having their vote go to waste or not tactically defeating the candidate that they're most afraid of. Because if their candidate that they rank first has the least amount of votes and no other candidate reaches a majority, that candidate's votes, their second choice is counted and added to those candidates, and so on until you have someone with a majority. And that does create true representation of a majority. And it doesn't matter who Republicans run as Democrats or Democrats, throw extra Republicans in there, or how the district is gerrymandered so much, because you have that ranked choice system. But until you have that, jungle primaries, like Amendment 3 would do, is an incredibly disenfranchising and disempowering solution. It just creates more problems, unfortunately. So I'm against Amendment 3.
And my 2 cents is, I share a lot of the same concerns, and then some different ones, because I'm in a minor party, and we are a working class party. We don't take money from any corporations, and our candidates generally don't, though we can't force them not to. And that means that basically you got to hope for a little bit of a dark horse action, because you're not going to be coming into it with millions of dollars that you raised, with your exploratory committee. Like you've got to. And I'll tell you, when I ran in 2018, I announced on May 1st, and that was a huge mistake, because nobody cares until mid-October. Like literally, I couldn't get any traction from anything anywhere, and all of a sudden, mid-October, my phone started ringing off the hook. Interview here, interview there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if it's something that I was able to raise about $6,000, and a big portion of that was in the last couple of months, versus my opponent's $150,000 that he had in his pocket literally before the race started. If I had to compete in 2 elections, one in August and one in December, then there's just no chance for a working class person to be able to have a campaign that's that long. It's kind of ridiculous, unless you have some kind of incredible charisma or something else going for you. So I absolutely oppose this. Furthermore, people who complain about closed primaries are talking about the presidency, and the presidency is not included in this bill. So it purports to solve a problem by making it worse, and then by not actually addressing the problem that people are talking about. So I don't remember if Palm Beach GSA has come out with an opinion on this yet or not, but I hope that we do, personally. All right, Milo, we're at about 10 minutes. You said you had to go, so maybe we should wrap everything up.
Yep. All right.
All right. So we want to remind everyone that they can go to our website. It is, let me make sure I get it exactly right, palmbeachdsa.org. And if you put a /voter-guide after that, you'll go straight to our voter guide. Otherwise, you can find it via the menu. Remind you that next Tuesday, I believe it is, the 18th of this month, is the primary. Even if you are not a member of a party, there's a very good chance there are judges and things like that. And there's also a very good chance that you live in a district that has some office or another that has only one set of party members running in it. So, for example, if your state rep race only has 2 Dems in it, and you're not a Dem, you can still vote in that primary because it is the election. So make sure you take a look at the sample ballot. Actually go to the supervisor elections for the sample ballot for your address, so you can see what's on there, because you may be surprised at the things you get to vote for. For example, are there any NPAs or Republicans running for sheriff this time around? Does anybody know?
I'm not sure. I think there might be a write-in NPA, but I'd have to double check.
All right. Well, that's the type of office I know. Remember, I'm pretty sure in 2016, what happened was that it was all Dems, and so the election was held in August, and nobody knew, and everyone's like, "Hey, when do we elect this guy?" It's like, you guys just elect him. You got to go to the primaries. They seem like a pain in the ass, but you got to go to the primaries. All right. So Cameron, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us. We already lost Milo. You and I are going to hang out and do a little video lesson a little later on in about 10 minutes here. So I'm going to end the live stream now, and then I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and you all have a great day.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.